Hello there, Ben Bowers, the Spirit Specialist, and I am here today with a look at another brand new single malt whisky release from a, I say brand new distillery, but they've been going for a few years, but this is the launch of their very first single malt whisky. It is the beautifully packaged Wireworks first release from the White Peak Distillery in Derbyshire. So we have a single malt English whisky here, and this is their very first release of a limited number of bottles. Absolutely beautiful bottle. I'll go into that in a second. Here's hoping that the liquid that's inside is just as good. But before we look at what the whisky tastes like, let me give you a bit of background information about White Peak Distillery itself. The White Peak Distillery is based in Ambergate, Derbyshire, 12 miles north of Derby city centre. It was founded by Max and Claire Vaughan in 2016, who were following a dream for years of producing a single malt whisky in Derbyshire, despite no previous experience in the drinks industry. The distillery is sited in a 24-kilometre stretch of the Derwent Valley that was awarded UNESCO World Heritage status in 2001, within the old maintenance and store sheds of the Johnson Nephew Wireworks that date back to 1876 and lasted for 120 years, which itself was rebuilt from a family-owned iron forge from the early 1800s. Initial spirit releases from White Peak included a range of gins and an agricole rum aged in ex-Bourbon barrels, with their first single malt whisky release initially scheduled for launch in November in 2021. However, supply issues with the distinctive bottle that pays homage to the wire and cable produced by the old factory meant the first release was delayed to February 2022. The team employ a longer than average fermentation period and use 2 copper pot stills of 3,000 and 2,100 litres in volume. Water is sourced from the River Derwent immediately adjacent to the distillery, utilising some of the old pumping infrastructure for their condenser cooling system. Only English barley is used, and when I visited a couple of days before the launch of their first release, the team had begun a run of spirit that was using barley taken purely from Derbyshire itself. Wireworks' first release is an individually numbered release of 5,016 bottles with an ABV of 50.3%. The whisky includes some peated spirit, which results in an overall phenol level of around 6 parts per million, and has been matured in a combination of first fill ex-Bourbon and shaved, toasted and re-charred red wine casks, although the precise proportion of these has not yet been divulged. In addition, no colouring is added and no chill filtration takes place. So, gorgeous bottle. Really like the sort of texture on it, the wire that's sort of twisted at the top to then run down. We've also got embossing on it, so I'm not sure if the camera's going to pick that up, but it says Derbyshire, England on the side, and then around the bottom here we also have Wireworks whisky. A really nice feel. I quite like these ones with the curved, slightly chunky base as well. I can understand, in fact I've just noticed on the bottom as well we've got White Peak Distillery embossed. I can absolutely understand why this got delayed, because there are a number of releases at the moment that have been delayed because of glass issues. What was it? Lockley was exactly the same. Highly textured bottle, was delayed for about 3-4 months. But I can absolutely understand why they held on until that bottle was ready, because this really is a fantastic eye-catching bottle. Feels really good as well. Now, this is numbered as well, as I said. So this particular one that I'm opening is 2961 of 5016, and the reason I'm opening this is at the end of next week I will be doing a tasting event online of the range from White Peak, featuring this to give some people a chance that may not have been able to get hold of the whisky, a chance to try it. So that's the top open. I got an allocation of it, not a huge amount, and they've already gone. So I approached my mailing list to say, is anybody interested in a bottle, and oversubscribed. Not quite as oversubscribed as Lockley, but not far off. So if you are wanting a bottle of right, well that's one for the blooper reel anyway. The microphone that I've got attached here is not wireless, it's on a cable, and the camera is over there, and the wire, because it goes under my jumper so that it doesn't look quite scruffy, isn't quite long enough for me to turn around and actually grab a glass on the shelf. So I'm going to have to be very careful about how I do this, because I don't particularly want to knock the bottle over. Anyway, as I was saying before we were so rudely interrupted by gravity, I am using this bottle for a tasting event next week. So we are going to have the gins, their rum, and then finish off with the whiskey as well. If you're wanting a bottle of this, unfortunately, I am already sold out. The bottles that I have already been allocated, and I have a reserve list, as is the case with brand new whiskey releases at the moment. That's just the way that the market is. I'm looking at the camera now, and it really feels like it's slightly wonky, and it's just going to bug the hell out of me. That's gone too far the other way. God, Ben, you're going to have a right blooper reel for this particular video. Just leave it, whatever. Let's carry on. So, lightly peated. So it is peated and unpeated spirit. And we're looking at about, I've been told a couple of times, about 6 ppm. So not a huge amount. And then we have this combination of ex-Bourbon and STR casks, which it does say on the label, STR and Bourbon, bottled at 50.3%. But, and I was at the distillery, so I am filming this on Wednesday, the 2nd of February, 2022. The whiskey launches on Thursday, the 3rd, 2022, obviously. We're not going to wait another year until it gets, until we release it. But on Monday, I actually went down to the distillery to pick up my stock. So I was having a chat with Kane, who's a sales manager and an absolutely lovely bloke. Managed to quickly get a chance to meet Claire and Max. As you can imagine, the week before they are launching, they are trying to sort absolutely everything out. So unfortunately, I didn't get much of a chance to have a good chat with Max, but it was really nice to kind of see the operation in person and see what was going on. I do recommend going to visit it if you can get down there. It's a bit of a weird place to get to because it's essentially a very old industrial estate, but it's got bags of character to it. Really, really good space for the stills, lovely and open. It'll be interesting in terms of the maturation because it can get pretty cold in those warehousing. Now, I must say that their dunnage warehouse, the scope that they have, the space that they've got for filling with barrels is enormous. It was a bit weird because at the other end of what would be their dunnage warehouse were a number of cars, and it turns out immediately over the other side, kind of in the same industrial estate, I suppose you'd call it, is something called Great British Car Journeys, which is a bit like a car museum, and there were some cars stored in there, which just looked odd, having like whiskey barrels maturing here, and then just over in the distance is a load of kind of plastic wrapped old cars kind of sat there, and it's like, right, well, yeah, actually we've got a lot of history going on in the same room. So if you can get down to the distillery, do go and check it out. It's well worth the trip. It's kind of one of those things that's like it's slightly hidden away. There is just literally a signpost on the main road, and all of a sudden you're kind of down and it's round the back, and it's a bit of a bumpy track and all this lot, but it's just got bags and bags of character on it, and a really nice team that work there as well. So I asked Kane, what's the proportion of bourbon to STR casks? And he was like, to be honest, I don't even know, because it's one of those where they've done it as a batch and they've kind of done a lot of, you know, this is not 46, it's 50.3. It's one where they've done a lot of tasting to get a very specific ABV, to get a very specific marriage of cask types and peated level and all of this lot to get it to the flavour profile that they want. So for the nerdy people amongst us, it's a little bit frustrating not to know what the exact proportion of bourbon to STR is, but as far as they're concerned, you know, it kind of doesn't matter as long as it tastes really good. And I kind of get the view from both sides as well. I'll be honest, they are really, really transparent. So, you know, I'm not trying to put across that they keep hiding things from you and not going to tell you how they're doing anything. It is just the fact that, look, you know, that's we've put this stuff together. They might be able to find out, but it's not something that they're necessarily going to kind of shout about. Having said that, video might come out and they might have already announced it, and I'm just talking absolute nonsense. Anyway, kind of irrelevant, sort of, because the most important thing is what it noses and what it tastes like. So, on the nose, and I feel like I've got something in my eye just at the wrong time. So let's try and get the nose done right. Eye sorted? Okay, let's go. Nose. Straight off the bat, you get a bit more of that bourbon-y influence. There is a touch of vanilla in there. There's a bit of a nutty note to it as well. And what's interesting is it starts off a bit more bourbon cask forward, so you get a slight sweetness. You do get a touch of kind of like that American whiskey vibe of sort of, you know, vanilla and a nice warm oak. And then the STR seems to come through. That influence from those red wine casks then starts to come through, because it then becomes a little bit more fruity, but there's a touch of dryness to it. I'm getting kind of like dried cherries. So, you know, you get those packs of dried fruits. Kind of like, yeah, dried cranberries. There's a cherry note in there, but it's almost a sour cherry. There's a touch of sweetness. There's a slight spiciness to it. Not overpowering, but there is a slightly dry spice. So it's slightly dry oak, but it's also just the merest touch of like dry chili flakes, but not like very much in the background. There's fruitiness in there as well. And then it starts to sweeten off again. You can really, on the nose, tell the two cask influences that are going on there. Starts off bourbon, and then the red wine really does come through. Okay, so on the palate, you don't really get much smokiness in there though. But that might be what's giving that slightly drier, spicy feel, is that little touch of peated spirit that's used. But it doesn't come across as a smoky whiskey. It's very, very subtle. But it actually is intertwining with the other notes that are coming through really, really well. A bit more of that smoke influence. Not massively so, but it's more pronounced than it is on the nose, but it's still very soft. Red wine elements there, definitely getting a touch of tannin, probably accentuated by that little element of peated spirit as well. Nice and fruity. Again, there's red berry notes, there's cherries, there is that dried cranberry feel where cranberries like raw are really tart, but when you get those packs of dried raisins, dried cranberries, that sort of thing, they're a lot deeper and richer. But it's still a nice bright fruitiness to it as well. There's a touch of the vanilla, again, as there is on the nose. The nose really follows through onto the palate. What I'm also getting, though, is a really nice, rich texture. There is quite a thick mouthfeel to this as well. And I'd be interested to know kind of where they took the cut. Now, I actually know somebody she's the assistant distiller, Sarah. And when I was at the distillery on Monday, I was having a little bit of a chat with her because she was actually taking a run of spirit off at the time. So I asked her, like, she was watching it come off the still. And I was like, where do you take your cuts? Is it like a percentage? Is it a particular ABV? Is it that sort of thing? Now, she told me initially the 4 shots are based on time. So it's essentially 15 minutes, and that's when they stop 4 shots. But the feints are based on ABV. And I can't remember what she said it was, the ABV. But it was 60 something. She said it ends up running off in total at about 70%. So they take the 4 shots off at a specific time, so they run it for 15 minutes and then swing the arm across. But then the feints to swing the arm back actually are based on not time, but on a specific ABV. And I get the impression that this is taking it fairly early because there is a weight to this as well, and it's really helping the fruitiness. I think it's also the higher ABV, but in all honesty, at 50.3%, it doesn't feel too high. I don't feel like I need to add water to this, and I actually feel like if I added water, we're going to start to lose some of the thicker mouthfeel that's there, that is really enveloping the fruitiness and adding to that complexity. There's a nutty character in there as well. There's almost praline. There's a touch of caramel, again to do with that kind of mouthfeel. But there is a nuttiness. There's fruit. There's sort of raisin. But again, there's that cranberry and cherry. It's not quite as deep and dark as a dark fruit cake. It's not raisins and sultanas and Christmas cakey, because it's bourbon and STR casks. You're not getting that sherry influence. It's lighter. It's more of a red fruit, like red berry fruits are coming through, which is that red wine, and you're getting that vanilla note from the bourbon cask, that kind of softer. That's where that caramel is coming through as well. It's very, very good. I'm really, really impressed with this. That little hint of smoke is again intertwining, lifting everything. I don't think it would be flat without it. I think if it was completely unpeated, it would still be a very good whiskey. But just having that tiny little element of smoke actually lifts it to another level and makes it even better. There's a lot of scope with this as well. They can go with more peat or go completely unpeated. I'd be very interested to see what they're doing with like other cask releases as well. But to be honest, it's a really, really impressive first release that has bags of flavour, bags of character. Very interesting, having tried Lockley last week, which was lighter, and you could see the potential with the PX casks that they were using. I think this has a bit more body to it, and that's more with the mouthfeel. I like what they're doing with that little touch of smokiness. And this is a really, really good advert for what they can produce moving forward. It's yet another, and I think I've said this now pretty much with all the new releases from all the new distilleries. It's yet another first release that is drinking brilliantly on its own and is a great advert for what it could become. I really, really recommend this. I think this is such a good job. It's a complete package in terms of it looks great. The bottle's absolutely beautiful. And fortunately, the liquid inside is also superb. There's a lot going on here. Don't be afraid of that smokiness. If you don't like smoky whiskies, it really is almost unnoticeable, the element of peated spirit that's in there. It's not upfront, it's not obvious there's some peated whiskey in there. It really is a very much a kind of supporting act of the lead focus instruments, returning to that orchestra analogy that I keep going back to. It's very much in the background, providing some ambience and some kind of texture, but up front it's very much kind of like vanilla, warm oak. There is a really nice warm oakiness to this as well. That kind of silky, slightly thick mouthfeel. And then you've got that kind of dried cranberry, cherry, red berry feel coming through from the wine cask as well. Really, really good stuff. Really impressive. As I said earlier, I am sold out already. I have already allocated the stock that I've got. Now, never say never that I might not be able to get my hands on some more. Seems to be unlikely. But if you can get your hands on a bottle from anywhere else, I mean, it'd be nice if you could get it from me, but I don't have that much. I do recommend it. I think this is very, very good. And I am absolutely sure, as was exactly the case with Lockley last week, that come tomorrow afternoon after it launches, there'll be some auction sites on where this is like, so it's retailing at $64.99, and there'll be some auction sites where it's already 200 quid because it says first release on it and it's got a number, because that's the way this industry is at the moment, which is a shame because it's about what's in the bottle, not about making money on it. And what's in the bottle of that, as gorgeous as that look, and you know, that is a really, really good design. Whoever came up with that design, you did a really good job there. It's about what's inside here that matters, and what's inside here is really, really good. Okay, that's me done. I shall see you in the next video. Cheers.